Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Mr. DB333, and welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4, the new order as Yunnan Province. And now last time we were here together, we finished up some basic events, including a bidding war for the handing off of a tin mine or whatever the fuck area. I'm doing great with this intro so far. Look at that. And currently, we're working on examining the Yunnan insurgency. Now, I realized we didn't read any of these national spirits, so I wanted to go ahead and rectify that. First off, we have the Army of the Southwest. While Yunnan and Guizhou are nominally two separate states, this does not apply to their militaries. As he, Ying Qing, manages the civilian affairs of Guizhou separately, Liu Han's Army of the Southwest provides the province's military protection. As such, it is not surprising to see Liu Han tighten his grip over Guizhou even more. Next, we have untapped potential. Our initial report was far from accurate. There are more resources hidden under our feet than once thought. We are in the process of offering contracts to companies to begin the excavate. I think that updated after we did one of those things. Okay. Also, the road to prosperity. Ever since its conquest under the Ming Dynasty, the Southwest was always neglected and central authority had always struggled to keep order in the region. A land of conquest and exploitation, Yunnan must catch up economically with the rest of China if we want to prove it is not an impoverished backwater and gain the people's trust in our government. Well, I don't know about trust, but yeah. Interesting. How's it going over here in Lhasa? Going well. Okay, good on Lhasa. I remember back when John Glenn was a president, there was a denuclearization summit you could have, and I think the best place you were supposed to have it, to have the best odds of having world peace, was supposed to be in Lhasa. So I just want to imagine having everyone fly out to fucking Lhasa in the middle of fucking Tibet. Fucking John Glenn, Bert Speer, and whoever's in charge in Japan at the time. And then someone tries to kill John Glenn, I think, there, and then they have to say, oh yeah, Burgundy's trying to fucking destroy the world. And you have to decide whether or not you think that's fucking stupid or not. Well. What do we want to do? Improve the army's situation. We both know fully why you're here, Chen. But what I want to know is, who would even begin to want to oppose me? Who could possibly be so misguided? Liu Han has spent the morning looking over the small mountain reports on the growing resistance within Yunnan. To say that even the sheer amount of reports was concerning would be inadequate, let alone what the reports themselves entailed. Well, in short, sir, there are roughly 4 separate insurgencies within Yunnan as of this moment, namely the bandits of the Southwest, who are currently isolating themselves within the mountainous terrain, which have proved a substantial challenge to law enforcement efforts. They're the remnants of the National Revolutionary Army fighting within the Burma Road, which has caused some trouble with transportation. There are the Chinese Communist Party fighting within the rural regions, and that's all to say nothing of the so-called National Protection Army movement within our own armed forces, fomenting their nationalism and revanchism, as you know. Liu Han nodded and stood up from his desk, walking towards the glorified accountant of Chen. Now, Chen, what would you recommend that I do about these insurgents? It seems that we have enemies around every corner in every facet of our government. We cannot stand with this subversion tearing us apart from the inside. Now then, what do you say that I do about it? Chen stood quiet for a moment, thinking as to what he should say. Root them out, sir? Exactly! That is exactly what I plan to do, and I know that I will not stop until Yunnan is safe. Safe from all those that would hope to tear it down. Luhan gestured towards the door, and Chen nodded before walking out of the office. Luhan sat back down at his desk and poured himself a drink. It was going to be a long night. Well, let's improve our administration in rural areas. It's going to bring our debt back up to where it's been, but we kind of need... We have a surplus going anyway, so I'm not too worried about that. Let's do the bandits of the southwest. Throughout the mountains of southwestern Yunnan, there lays a despicable disease to Yunnan, which has only grown in size since it was first identified nearly 20 years ago. As an order within Yunnan first faded and gave way to a widespread banditry in the uncrossable lanes of the mountains and rivers of the southwest, these blights on both humanity and Yunnan have done nothing but disrupt our economy and threaten the lives of our landlords. This ends now. It will be a long, hard campaign, but it must be done if we hope for our most loyal landlords to remain safe and happy. By beginning a series of anti-terrorist operations in the southwest, we will begin the long process of properly uprooting these bandits from Yunnan. All it will take is time. It's one of my favorite Pink Floyd songs. So we can up the garrison and the police. Interesting. Who's the bigger threat right now? Probably the bandits. Let's focus on them right now. The rest are catching up, but we'll get there. Alright, so let's take a gander at this. The Yunnan insurgency. Luhan's fiefdom of landlords and lapdogs has earned itself more than its fair share of enemies over the years, and those who were brave or stupid enough to oppose us have been a considerable thorn in our side. If we hope to counter these insurgents and terrorists, we need to root out all these partisans without hesitation and fast. We hope to secure Yunnan from these threats. We need to crush them like the insects they are. There is no alternative but suppression for these insurgents via police and garrisons, and we will need to do whatever it costs and pay whatever miscellaneous cost of safety force requires to secure Yunnan, unless Luhan's regime comes to a tragic end. However, these groups are ultimately hostile to Luhan's collaboration instead of Yunnan itself. And while Luhan's regime may seem unchallenged so far, we may find ourselves in a weaker position in the case Luhan's mandate collapses, and we suppress the insurgents too harsh. So I don't know if we want to really mess with this too much, actually. Questions. Well, amidst the intellectuals of National Southwestern Associated University, one young teacher stood head and shoulders above the rest. Jiang Jaemin, the professor of electrical engineering. This man was the most talented and passionate academicians the college had ever seen. but academic qualities alone did not contribute to Jiang's fame. What made him outshine his peers was his particularly progressive, albeit subtle, political views. Most notable of all were two things. First, his zealous hatred for Japan's colonialism that had passed off as Pan-Asianism. And second, his open and harsh disgust towards Liu Han's program of collaborating with Nanjing. It was, then came as no surprise, that Jiang was known to sympathize openly with insurgencies, particularly the NPA. In furtherance of that ideology, nowadays he'd even started holding some talks and lectures in the humanities. While his influence was growing day by day, Jiang currently was merely treated as someone sympathetic with the reformists led by Tao Yisheng, an old friend of the president himself. Jiang's proactivity in Nanjing matters only reinforced this view. This, combined with the relative academic freedom seen in the SAU, and the fact that, as far as anyone knew, Jiang only spoke and did not act, protected Jiang from trouble thus far. Of course, if they realized what Jiang was really up to, he would have been arrested and even beheaded as a traitor and a reactionary. Fortunately for Jiang, most others knew nothing about him beyond the basics that have been stated above. The complete picture of Jiang and his actions was only known to a few, almost all outsiders far away from Liu Han's reach. Nonetheless, Jiang was now a rising star in Yunnan as proof of the growing reformist influence. It was not yet known just how much Yunnan would be influenced by this zealous young man. Someone to watch out for? What turns a man to crime? The night sky over Yunnan's highest mountains was beautiful. The stars and moon stood far above anything else, though they hardly caught the attention of the half-dozen bandits that sat around the crackling fire, sharing stories in a pitifully small meal. If it could even be called that. The most recent addition to the ranks of these bandits, however, was a man named Huang. By midnight, the moon was up and the last bites of food had been eaten. All that was left for the rest of that night was of stories. For lack of alternatives, Huang had taken the metaphorical stage. Well, Huang, how'd you wind up here? The smiles were still lingering around the fire, and many were beginning to want to call it a night. The man in question was young, no older than 25, and had the face and posture of a hungry man, but had certainly anything but the body of a starving man. Well, I came here from northern Yunnan, actually. There, the landlords, they and Liu Han's thugs, they all did whatever they wanted. My family, you see, they weren't rich folks, just farmers. One day my mom got sick. We thought it was the typhoid. We worked to keep her healthy, traded with the closest we had to a pharmacist. We traded plenty of what we had for medication. We didn't make rent. The circle grew quiet. All that could be heard was the crackling of the flames. They came for our crops first. There wasn't anything which we had left, so we had already given them everything we had, you know. They still came. They set all alight. There wasn't much left by then, but they still called it a warning, expected us to pay it the next week. Obviously, we all know we couldn't, and they definitely knew too. Otherwise, we wouldn't have left. The mountains grew completely silent, as even the fire faded to ash. The mountains would only grow closer to total silence as the months grew longer. Let's do the land of thieves. Of all the vital gears in the great machine of Liu Han's Yunnan, there are few as influential or profitable as the humble landlord. Having done more than their fair share for the economic prosperity of Yunnan, it goes without saying that those within our territories who hold the title of a landlord are more than willing within their right to demand protection and security. In light of the bandit epidemic across Yunnan, it is high time that we fulfill our promises to these landlords. Through cooperating with the afflicted landlords and further cracking down on these glorified thieves, we're liable to burn right through this little problem of banditry. Well, there we go. Oh no, the insurgents are attacking. I'm not sure how much we really want to immediately worry about this. I'm probably going to have to take a break after I record this, just to do a bit more research on how this all works. But yeah. Huang had just gotten used to his monthly routines and had begun to take pride out of what he did for a living. It took some time, but eventually he'd found justification for his useless moral quandaries. If this was what anyone had needed to do to make a living, then it was justified. If there proved no alternative, then it was morally correct. So Huang just reminded himself as he looked over the village ahead of him. It was an insulting sight, a dozen or so of Yunnan's army, already greatly concerning. Even more concerning was the army's citizens fortifying the center intersection. If the people had cooperated with the army of Yunnan, then Huang's gang had been raiding far too frequently, something to note for later. Now Huang's gang of similarly trained bandits would beat back government forces consisting of twice their size, what was a harrowing thought, barely reassured by his allies around him. Nah, it'll all work out. Well, I'm surprised this'll work. Didn't even sound like the man had believed it, let alone convinced the rest of thieves. Anyone got any ideas? Huang asked for a collection of bandits, himself among them. The village was well defended. It became clear that the citizens may have well been among the village defenders. No, the gunfire from that farmhouse there. Bandits had continued to debate the best course of action. From the looks of it, things weren't holding up. Well, we could always... No, hold on, never mind. The group looked at each other, desperation painted on their faces. Maybe we should just go home. I mean... let's show no mercy. Across all of Yunnan, our efforts to crush the NRA, CCP, bandits, and NPA have all shown limited success at best. While we do seem to be wearing down from this scent at a considerable rate, it is proving far from fast enough to keep the dissidents down. Should we really want to purge all of Yunnan of these insurgents, we need to do everything in our power to rid ourselves of the terrorists. Everything. We've already worked our tactics time and time again. We've already put our loyal troops on high alert. We've already done everything that we can. Our troops, then, must be the ones to do more for Yunnan. Our current restrictions for the troops are more or less already loosely enforced, though they are far from harsh enough to deal with the countless insurgents. We are far past the time for mercy. No matter what it takes, we will secure Yunnan. There we go. Still paying off some of this debt in the meanwhile. Let me up the police by a little bit. I want to see what this will do. I'll read all of these now. I'll read them now, actually. So we have the first group opposed to our rule are the remnants of the National Revolutionary Army along the Burma Road, which has disrupted traffic with ourselves in Burma, not to mention the constantly raiding government assets and arms depots. While they are far from on track to overthrow our rule, we will need to dispose of them in due time. Next, the Chinese Communist Party continues to accumulate support from within the rural regions, gaining popularity for their populism against our loyal landlords. While they are still largely irrelevant at the present, they are still disrupting the actions of the state, and we will need to keep an eye on them, lest they grow beyond our recognition. Next, the bandits of southwestern mountains have caused incredible pain for our landlords, as they have robbed our businessmen of their rightful profits. These thieves have not only caused problems for our state, they are not liable to stop until we put a stop to these activities. Finally, the greatest threat to Liu Han's government at this point in time is not a foe from without, but an opponent from within. The NPA movement within the military and the upper administration has grown beyond belief and continues to attempt to return China to an age of nationalism and revanchist ideas. To secure our state, we will need to put an end to this outdated belief, one way or another. Or we could not, you know? I personally like the not idea. ourselves winning the World Cup. Got some extra infantry kits. Let us go ahead and do one more bandit hunt. Our past actions against the bandits of the southwest have been effective. There is a marked decrease in banditry within the mountains, and our lower landlords are reporting fewer and fewer armed robberies. Even still, it's not enough. It's not enough. View is solid. I can't finish the rest of that. With every bandit arrest or shot, there seems to be another dozen that pop out of the mountains. Why this is, of course, is still up to debate, though now is not the time to debate such non-issues. What is in need of addressing is the ever-increasing banditry. As we stifle the bandits on the streets and more come up with to replace each arrested felon, it's clear we must redouble our efforts to crush these criminals. By incentivizing the police to increase their focus on the bandits, we will surely find the bandits to die off like the fading disease that they are. Let's do some hospitals next. No deal is the Argentine ideal. That's catchy, I like that. Damn it, now I have a G and X stuck in my head. Just as with many others born in the midst of China's century of humiliation, Jiang Zemin had a strange background. Born in 1926, he was originally an undergraduate in the National Central University of Nanjing. When the war ended and ceasefire was signed, Jiang graduated with a bachelor's degree. Looking around, he noticed that Luhan had allowed the continuation of the NSAU, formed by a university that had retreated from the mainland. So Jiang moved to Yunnan to pursue his academic dreams instead of staying under the sight of those Japanese and Hanjiang scum he had long despised. His old friend, Wang Jiayu, who had given Jiang the idea in the first place, followed him to Kunming. The NSAU, approaching Jiang's competence and talent, jumped at the chance of having him work with them. Eventually got a doctorate, which he then used to become a professor of electrical engineering at the university. But as he continued his engineering work, he increasingly advocated for claims and opinions of the NPA in Yunnan as well as those of his student dissents in Nanjing. One day after completing his lecture, Jiang was on his way back home. His ruminations were interrupted by some police who recognized Jiang as a political dissident and attempted to stop him. This was in fact just an attempt to extort the well-dressed Jiang to make a voluntary contribution to their poor salaries. Jiang began to rebuke them in fluent Japanese. The responsible police officers were left with no choice but to apologize, not stupidly, and run away. This was a regular part of Jiang's routine. Watching the officers run away, he thought that as much as he hated to pick up Japanese, it served him damn well so far. Reporting home, Jiang began his nightly work, writing notes and reports to his comrades and organizing names that need strong attention. After that, he set about writing a letter about Yunnan's situation and his experience so far to a friend of his in Nanjing. Competence and mystery. Becoming a little too close for my liking. Let's focus on the NPA for a bit. Oh! Okay, next we're working on Ghosts of the Past. Across Yunnan, covert NRA operations have been in full swing since the crush of Chongqing, the establishment of Luhan's rule over Yunnan. These operations were initially believed to be low-level crime and robbery, though it is now clear as to just how extensive these insurgents are within Yunnan. After some preliminary reports against the organization, it is clear as to how powerful the NRA has become, and how much of a threat it stands to become against Luhan's government. Thanks to their connections within Burma and low-level government officials, not to mention the currying of favors of countless landlords, the NRA partisans, perhaps the biggest external threat to the regime, has become the most influential leaders of the black market. and stand to become strong enough to rise up and cause serious trouble for Luhan. If we strike now, however, we'll be strangling the insurgency in the crib, and we will certainly manage to survive this horrible ordeal. Let's focus on the army situation. How is our credit rating looking? Do I even want to... it's rising, actually. That would probably be better for us. Cut down on the interest payments we have to do. What's our austerity to nothing there? I think the only thing that'll do anything is civilian austerity. But we kind of... I want to build out that extra factory. We don't have national power outages otherwise. We still need to get working on that. Both cousins watched the pyre burn from afar. The golden light brought out the features of their faces in sharp relief to the almost pitch blackness from behind. Darkness, which normally would have concealed several careful ears, listening patiently for whatever they would say. But today those ears would not be hiding anywhere. They would be dancing with everyone else around the fire. The Torch Festival was the most sacred occasion of the year to the Yi people, a loyalty that ran as deep as that to the Chinese nation for Long Yun and Luhan. This year, the relief of a good celebration was needed more sorely than ever, and so the full resources of state were devoted to a festival more stunning and lavish than any he had ever been held in Yunnan. It was also a good excuse to send to the remotest parts of the country those government functionaries that were really just the Nanjing regime's eyes and ears, and escape to Jiaotong, where the loyalty of local people was guaranteed. This was their homeland and hometown, and no bigwig from any other part of the world would be honored over the local heroes who had earned such distinctions in the war, regardless of what some had done after. Finally, the moment came. The festival was in full swing, and over the loud beating of drums and the hearty crackle of flames, Luhan and Yonglun spoke to each other properly for the first time in months, maybe years. You know why I wanted to speak with you. Long Yun began in an almost accusatory tone. Perhaps it was deserved. I do. And I also know that you lack the full picture. But now we can speak freely. Let me at least explain myself. And so the night proceeded. I'll pop a bunch over into here. Uh-oh. Luhan, when I gave up the right to govern and left it to you, I didn't believe you would follow in my footsteps. That you would work in the best interest of our people and our nation. And that is the philosophy which has guided my actions over the last 2 decades. Cousin, the war is over. It's long been over. Resisting Japan or their lapdogs in China is pointless. They control everything in Asia. The best path is simply working with them and securing a path for Yunnan in their new order. Long Yun listened patiently. People in difficult situations often have to convince themselves of their enemy's propaganda in order to survive, in order to make some sense of the world. Luhan would realize soon. And as walking in Tokyo's shadow served us so, this morning I decided to visit a shop in the outskirts of Kunming. Not where we usually go as government servants. The owner was a woman missing a hand who had wrapped in a foul, stinking bandage covered in blood. She was practically on death's door, yet still had to work to afford what little rice she could. Her husband had died some weeks ago in a mine, the Baoshan No. 5 zinc mine, the inauguration of which we both attended, and all she got was a letter commending his sacrifice for the company. This is the nation you've built, Luhan. Is this really what we wanted? At this, all Luhan could do was sputter. Nonsense, he called it. Cherry picking. But the words had hit him deep in his heart of hearts, he could not help but agree. Nothing owed to Long Yun, however, and his hopefulness at getting Luhan to understand soon began to wither. He tried one last time to convince him. I know you are regarded by these people as a king, cousin, but I'm the leader here, and you seem to be trying to influence me in some other direction. I know what I'm doing. There was no use. Bitterness gripped his heart as the king realized there was no other option. As Luhan blabbered on about some other inane thing, Long Yun stared deep into the pyre as it roared away. Before my life leaves my body, I alone will free Yunnan of her shackles. One way or another. Oh dear. Yeah, they're So what did the garrison do exactly? Did it do anything? I'm not sure. Zhao would wonder in his great abundance of spare time as to what the notion of nationalism was exactly, especially given what had happened to China. What remains of the NRA had rarely had a moment to breathe since evacuating, however it could. It just so happened that Zhao's cell had been hiding with the North Burma, right alongside what remained of the Burma Road. Since 1937, Zhao had spent his time fighting for China's freedom from Wuhan to Chongqing, and finally to where he sat now, in his cot in the ad hoc training camp, which had been bringing up in young men and pumping out soldiers. For that, Zhao could blame few others than himself. Zhao! Fresh batch coming in. 30 minutes. Face had half peeked into the tent. Letting out a sigh, Zhao had heaved himself off his bedside and was hit with the overwhelming realization of why he was training and not the one raiding the Burma Road. Of course, all could do their part for China one way or the other, and Zhao would not stop until China was free, one way or another. Stepping out into the front of a disorganized camp of confused volunteers, he still seemed to be taking in the camp, till he noticed Zhao and his chest of iron medals, marching towards the chattering collection of young men. By the time Zhao had walked up to the end of the line, the crowd had completely silenced. Thinking to his speech, Zhao began to walk down the aisle. Now, it has come to my attention, gentlemen, that you all hope to liberate China, liberated of Japanese influence, liberated of its authoritarianism. You all hope to bring liberation to China, and you have joined us in our war against the collaborators to the rats in Japan. For that I must thank you, for nobody else ever will. Another batch had come around. Let's do... Let's do the Burma Road in danger. A constant threat to the Burma Road has always been, and continues to be, the NRA. Like an insufferable cancer that knows no bounds, the NRA has been feeding off of the Burma Road to sell their own goods and profits off of whatever they can steal. Not a month ago, the NRA had blown up a convoy making its way from the Azad Hind government. This is far from the beginning and far from the end. Even still, it can mark the beginning of the end. We'll redouble our efforts to secure the Burma Road, but between providing additional garrisons and cracking down on known cells, this will do nothing short of obliterate the regional NRA. That is the hope, and should our troops do their jobs, we only have reason to believe that these operations will succeed. Oh, there we go. Oh, there we don't go. Looks like the Middle East is gonna be on fire for a bit. Madame Sun Yat-sen's manor in Nanjing is guarded by four soldiers. Not to protect her. No, to keep her in. The collaborators thought her a threat to the regime. And they would be correct. Had she been free, there would be no saying where she would be. Off west, where rumors had abounded of old Kuomintang and communist partisans, continuing insurgency, or flitting from city to city, spreading the word of liberation and equality, bearing resistance networks for that one day where China, slumbering and choked by the chains of a samurai, of collaboration would free itself. Yes, she was indeed dangerous, but she was also a potential resource, they thought. Wang Jingwei had perverted the image of Kuomintang to the point of being beyond recognition, but he still had maintained a facade of tracing his government's lineage from her late husband's movement. As the wife of Dr. Soon, the madam's approval would move mountains to advance the regime's legitimacy. In contrast, killing her would also serve sever that already non-existent link between the father of the nation and their rule. And so Wang, and Gao after him, had endeavored time after time to persuade and threaten their way into a statement in support of the government from her. Every time for 20 years, she had all but laughed in their faces. She had not bowed to the tyrant, Chiang Kai-shek, let alone an unabashed traitor to the nation as imperial puppet masters. They even placed her in her house, arrested and neutralized her, but they would have been fools to believe she was powerless within the mansion's four thick walls. She still kept contact with the dissidents within and without the state apparatus, who still resisted the collaborators' rule. The pen would be her new saber in the battle for China. She picked up a fountain pen, fetching a new piece of paper. Excuse me. Esteem Jiang Jimin. So what happens now that this is maxed out? Does it do anything? Because her garrison's immediately fucking cut down inside. I'm not convinced we even want to do anything, honestly. We can't do anything, for that matter. It was funny how times changed everything that Zhao had come to know. Since the days of Sun Yat-sen, to Japan's invasion all those years ago, and finally the crushing of Chongqing, where Mao and Chiang Kai-shek had died fighting side by side. Every other day it seemed the very fabric of China shifted, and today was no different. Today the decision was made by NRA High Command, which apparently existed, to expand operations across Burma and into Yunnan. To facilitate this, making use of excessive troops pouring in from Yunnan proved far from enough, and all the hands were called on deck. It just so happened that Zhao found himself with a pair of those hands, and enough experience in the 40s to get caught with the rank of officer. It was more or less a ceremonial role, however, as officers had rarely engaged in active combat, and all orders had come from the generals and high command, which had just come out of mothballs. Why his unit was being assigned to the biggest raid on the Burma Road since 1947 then came as something of a surprise to him. Laying in the trees alongside a half dozen of his former trainees, it seemed as though they'd forgotten about spacing. It didn't really bother Zhao. He couldn't be bothered to be bothered, frankly. Besides, so far as Zhao could tell, it wasn't even close. Between the two militias to fight for him, he would prefer his own 1,000 to 1. That was also an accurate statistic, which was also mildly concerning. A rumbling began to grow over the roads ahead of him, snapping Zhao out of his clouds of thought. They could already see it, a small convoy of trucks, 2 APCs, a line of what seemed to be heavily armed refugees. Otherwise known as Yunnan's best and brightest. Alright. You boys ready? The glorified partisans chuckled. The NRA grows stronger. Well, let's contact Burma for cooperation. We cannot strike the NRA alone, certainly not with limited power within our jurisdiction. As a result, our wisest leader, Lu Han, has made an effort to reach out to the Burmese government, coordinate a properly coordinated force against the NRA, and secure the Burma Road. Should all go to plan, we will be able to use the combined powers of Yunnan and Burmese armies. It is imperative that this meeting go to plan. Should we fail to coordinate a sizable force capable of crushing the NRA, then we are liable to lose out on money, not only being taken out of our pockets, but the NRA will also gain a considerable foothold in the region. While far from a death blow, we will certainly be set back on our efforts, which is something we can't afford. Well, let's start that, and let's end this right now. I'm going to leave things there, but thanks always for watching, gang. Like if you liked, dislike if you didn't. Leaving comments or feedback down in the comment section below. I read all comments again, and I do appreciate any of you might have for me. Hit the sub on notification bell, keep up to date with these episodes as they come out. I think I'll know the deal by now. Thanks for watching. My name has been Mr. Dogboat333, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye now.